Was this something that they'd foreshadowed in that filing where they lay out the evidence? Was it something that the federal judge who ruled in the Eastman case sort of let out the bag? I mean, how and when and why did this come out now?
So the committee really laid out this case in that filing, in the Eastman case, as they were trying to get the emails that this lawyer who was advising Trump in those days leading up to January 6th may have. It was almost an indictment, essentially, what they filed. The committee has no criminal powers at all, but it was their version of an indictment, their way of laying out the evidence and saying, look, we think Trump violated these two laws, obstructing a congressional investigation and defrauding the American people. So we've known for some time that that was their perspective. And then what happens is that the judge rules in that case and really sides with the committee, basically saying it's more likely than not that someone, Trump and Eastman, broke the law here. And what it is that, so on one hand, the committee feels confident that they have more than enough to go to the Justice Department and say, hey, Justice Department, there's a fair amount of criminality to be examined here. But the question that they are now wrestling with is that, does that make sense? Because they have wanted this pressure to be built on Garland. This is what they basically started doing when Liz Cheney started reading from the criminal code back at the end of last year. That pressure that they wanted, that they thought they needed to make a referral to create, has already been created because of the judge's ruling, the disclosures that have come out and such. So do they need to make the referral at this point? Do they actually need to do that? Because the pressure is already there. And if they do that, does it undermine an investigation ultimately? Because what it would do is people would say, well, this is the Justice Department just doing what the democratically controlled Congress wants it to do. So why do you need to make the referral if the pressure is already there and a federal judge has said, look, I think there was criminality. I think they believe that that is enough for Garland to do something.
Well, I mean, Harry Litman, you tell us, I mean, is a referral without making a referral simply a referral in other names? I mean, have they proved their point? And by making clear that they have the evidence without going through the procedure of the referral, have they done essentially what a referral would do? Tell me the difference between stopping now with a federal judge agreeing with Mike's assessment that they have adequate evidence and explain what a referral is. I mean, I think a lot of people are wondering why a congressional committee would have to go through this step at all. Why isn't Garland just investigating what appear like clear crimes?
He is, and he has all this evidence and probably more, and they can always give it to him. A referral is simply tying it up at the end and saying, we refer this to you for criminal prosecution or investigation into doing that. Why would they do it? Look, there's a certain drama and gravity to have a branch of the government, just as when Judge Carter made that proclamation, you know, a branch of the government actually say so. And remember, when Bob Mueller made no conclusion because he thought he was so bound, it left a kind of muddled and mealy report. Those are the reasons why. But on the other hand, and I think this is a genuine, by the way, nuanced judgment call, not just like a political rift in the committee. If you do it, as Mike says, it puts pressure on Garland. He probably can disregard it, but it will diminish or give a rise to charges of politicization if he does pull the trigger on it. And it could also, I think, they're worried, kind of be off-putting, as if, you know, they're putting too much on him. There's no doubt that it gives him nothing in terms of evidence. And one more thing, when they make referrals for contempt, they're the victims, and that matters. That weighs in the balance. Here, they're just giving information. So I think it's really this sort of political act, and I don't mean to discount that, of having a, you know, Congress say so that weighs in favor. And, you know, but there are things on the other side, and especially the point Mike made about giving a ready-made argument, a club to sort of beat them with, by Republicans saying it's just Garland, dancing to their tune.
I mean, let me argue the other side here for a second, Harry Litman. I mean, yeah. I'm guessing Liz Cheney wouldn't have read from the criminal statute if Liz Cheney had confidence that that criminal statute was being upheld by the Garland Justice Department. I mean, the vacuum that's been created hasn't been created by the 1-6 committee. It's been created by this sense. And again, we don't know. It's opaque. Maybe they are steaming ahead, and maybe all these witnesses are, for the first time in the 5 times they've been investigated since Trump arose, just keeping their mouths really, really quiet. Maybe we're all wrong, and Garland has Donald Trump in his sights. But the vacuum wasn't created by Congress. It was created by Merrick Garland. Why are they so fragile? Why does whether or not he investigate Trump depend on whether the committee refers it or not?
It doesn't. You're totally right. And by the way, yes, the very statute she read many months ago is exactly. It's clear. It's just clear at this point that they have the evidence. They have the evidence of intent. It doesn't matter even if he didn't know that it was unlawful, but the evidence is copious that he did know. So it's very clear. What the decision will turn on is not the evidence, but a whole welter of factors having to do with, is this the right thing for the country? And that's Garland's lonely decision. But you're right. He's no shrinking flower. He has it all. The only reason to do it, I think, is to make their own statement as the committee at the culmination. Hey, we're not just giving you information. We're telling you Trump committed crimes here. It shouldn't, and it won't, in my estimation, actually influence Garland.
So, Jackie, Mike laid out the 2 crimes that we know the committee has gathered evidence on, and now, as he's reporting, believes they have reached that bar to make the criminal referral. Liz Cheney seemed to be describing a different crime entirely in this interview yesterday. It sounded a lot more like a conspiracy. Let me play that for you.
I think what we have seen is a massive and well-organized and well-planned effort that used multiple tools to try to overturn an election. You've seen just in the last few days a plea agreement from one of the leaders of the Proud Boys, which lays out in really chilling detail the extent to which violence was planned, the extent to which the message that went out on December 19th about the planning, about the rally in Washington, and don't forget, Donald Trump tweeted out that message, be there, be wild, that the day after that message, the organization and the planning started, and that they understood, that they knew that they were going to attempt to use violence to try to stop the transfer of power. That is the definition of an insurrection, and it is absolutely chilling.
So, Jackie, it seems like with this bar reach, what Liz Cheney is talking about is new evidence or additional evidence that ties Trump to the violence. Is that where the committee is focusing its efforts?
Yeah, well, Congresswoman Cheney has been really ahead of the pack when it comes to plotting out where exactly the committee wants to be heading in. So it is smart of all of us to be parsing all of her public statements and including some of the sort of outlines of criminal statutes that she's referencing. So it does very much sound like that. We haven't heard anything from the committee just yet. But then if we're going back and if we're looking at sort of the mirror operation, the Justice Department investigation that the Justice Department is conducting, that is primarily, the lane that they're focused on at the moment, although they've approached it really from a bottom-up approach, sort of the opposite of the way that the January 6th committee has been going about their business in terms, at least from a public perspective. But again, I do think, you've seen this back and forth as Mike and the New York Times team really got out this weekend about how far should the committee go when it comes to actively talking about criminal referrals, and this disagreement that has played out in public view since Benny Thompson first mentioned the word criminal referral in December and has really waffled on just how aggressive the committee is ultimately going to be. But one thing that someone I spoke with who's involved in the investigation told me that's really resonated to me is at the end of the day, the committee might be better suited to staying in in their lane in terms of making sure that they prove a higher standard of proof that Trump was morally liable. And that as a political question, that might in some ways have more of an impact as to making as you know, the word that the New York Times used, a superfluous referral to the Justice Department of a criminal referral.